Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm Martina Laird, and I want to start by saying this. People keep asking me why it's called Palimpsest, and I know some of you were here earlier, so you will hear my explanation given a second time. Palimpsest is a word that I first came across when we were doing the brunch discussion. I see Michelle Austin there, who is part of the brunch discussion. Sharon is somewhere, I think that's you there. Sharon Duncan Brewster started basically a group of black actresses of a certain age, not just black actresses in this case, and it was about getting together and going, who are we, how do we feel, and what is it that we want to do? And out of that discussion, Michelle went on to make her first short film called which basically the only dialogue is this, and you will all recognize this. And Natasha, from whom I got this word, has written her first play, which will be performed here at the National next year, called 9 Nights. So that's Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, who's always been an influence. And what I want us to recognize is that by being here and doing this, we are honoring an oral tradition. We are honoring ancestral format and the oral narrative. Because what we're doing in passing our stories amongst ourselves is also saying, I see you, and I witness you, and we are here together. Part of the inspiration also was, I have always been privileged to work with young people. There are some of them here today, and it was interesting that I was starting to hear more and more a kind of a crisis, a kind of a panic of isolation, but also a kind of a spiritual disengagement. And I wanted to go, no, don't worry, you're not alone. You actually come from a family, you come from a community, and it's essential to have that sense for the sense of self to not be fragmented. So everyone who's here today, I hope will know that they are part of a family, that they are connected, and that exchanges can build between that. We have our amazing panel. I am like happy beyond happy. And I hope that those of you who are here for the fact-based parts of it earlier will know some of the stories that we were dealt by Yvonne Brewster. People's pedigrees now. Look them up. And we heard from Angela Wynter. This is Anni Domingo. Suzette Llewellyn. And Noma Dumezweni. This is Natasha Bonalam, who worked at the National, was a huge inspiration for this moment because she did her series of black theatre readings a couple of years ago, and a lot of us met and talked and just kind of touched base as a result of her work. And so she's here because she's put this together. I would also like to thank the National Theatre and Judith Merritt, because it's good that we're here. Yes. And it's good that this conversation is happening here. So the first thing I want to ask my panel is, and then we will open up to Q&A quite soon, because I want to use this time. We have an hour, and I wanted to use it for the exchange between us all. But the first thing I'd like to do, because I want to call names, because I've talked about ancestors. The song you heard was about ancestors. And I want these ladies to talk about palimpsest. Do you all know what palimpsest means? No. So, palimpsest, I was saying, wasn't I, was a word that I was introduced to by Natasha Gordon at the brunch discussion. And basically it's a concept of when you have an artist who paints on a canvas, And at some point, for whatever reason, whether it's poverty, whether it's a change of mind, a kind of a regret, whatever, paints over the original image. And what happens, generally it seems, is that the old image will start to come through the new, and you will see what was there originally. And that's why this is called Palimpsest. I want to introduce you to the image that I saw when I got here. So that's these ladies. Now, can I just go in order and ask you for your palimpsest, what is underneath the image? Not Natasha, because Natasha can't speak today.
What she said.
Noma.
My palimpsest. I arrived in England at the age of 7 from Africa. I say my autobiography will be called From Africa to Ipswich. And with that comes a mindfuck along the way. Growing up in Ipswich, Suffolk, I didn't see very many people who look like me, as we all know this timing. I'm 48 this year. And then this woman turns up on TV in a program called Blake 7, and it's Suzette Llewellyn. She has short hair, like mine. She's dark skinned, like me. I'm going, okay, and then I just can't help but start reading and following this woman who's brilliant and what she does. And I actually had the privilege of finally meeting her this year and giving her praise and saying thank you for existing. So Suzette Llewellyn's my palimpsest.
I think I had a few, because growing up, I grew up in the 70s, and what I saw were films. So I saw films. I mean, I loved Ruby Dee when I saw her in films. But I also remember Love Thy Neighbour, which, but you know what, my family, it wasn't great, but you know what, these were black people on television. And I remember we went actually to the cinema to see the film version of Love Thy Neighbour. And I loved Nina Baylor-Sinter. I thought she was just, I thought she was, you know, wonderful. And then later, I remember seeing, it was Burning an Illusion. And I remember Angela from that, and I also remember Cassie McFarlane. And I remember just being, And in theatre again, I was seeing people who I thought were great. I always loved Corinne Skinner-Carter. I thought she just always stood out and stood up, and she was great. And Mona Hammond, of course, who I thought was wonderful as well. So I've got a few. It was always, there were a few, they were all coming through, definitely.
Well, I have one, and it's in Jamaica, and it's much later than 1970s. This was 1953, and I was home from boarding school, and my father took me to the Ward Theatre in Jamaica to see a French play, a very upmarket in Jamaica, called Huis Clos. It's called Vicious Circle, and in it was this woman who I said to my father, "Daddy, she looked just like me." "No, you don't. No, you don't." At the end, I said, "I want to go and get her autograph." "We don't do that in Jamaica." Anyway, we went into Rum Lane, which is a very smelly lane in Kingston, and out came Mona Hammond. And she signed my program. And I said to my father, "I want to be just like her." I still have the autograph.
Well, mine's slightly different because I was born here, but then they took me to Africa. And I remember my mother, who they used to be semi-professional ballroom dancers in England during the war. And when they went back, they had their own radio program, which I started working on at the age of 6. So I always knew that this is what I wanted to do, even if I didn't see the people the same as me. So when I decided I was going to come to England to study, my father was not very happy, but eventually I made it over. And one of my first things of fighting for what I wanted was to say that I couldn't come to England for the audition because I wasn't going to come all this way and not get in and then have to go back. So I got in touch with Rose Bruford because I'd learned that they had black students. Somebody from Sierra Leone had been a student there. This is how I knew about it. And to satisfy my father, you also could do a teaching diploma. So that was the compromise we came to. But I refused to come, so I did my audition for Rose Bruford by tape. I sent them a tape on the Grundig machine. And they accepted me by tape. I never saw them till I came here. So one of the people I knew had gone to Rose Bruford was so that was one of the first names of black people in theatre that I learned about. And the other person who was very influential to me was Mona Hammond, who became a great friend, because once I was at drama school, I was working for the BBC as well. And I went to interview her and Oscar James when they did Black Macbeth at the Roundhouse Theatre, and I was amazed to see all these black actors doing Shakespeare, but moving it into a different era. So those were two of the people who influenced me very, very early on that put me where I am. But the funny thing is when you talk about Josette, I remember meeting Josette as a child when I did, I was the only black person in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in Leicester, and she came from Leicester, and she was in the children's choir, and she came up to me afterwards and says, "You're the first black actor I've met face to face." Wow. And the next time I saw her, she said, "I've gone to Central because of you." So it goes around and around and around.
My two people are her, but Miss Yvonne, who gave me the courage to do what I wanted to do, but had not the courage to do, and would very vigorously give me a boost, and just made me braver, fearless, made me more fearless. And the second person is a bit off, not a bit off the script, right on the script, is Winnie Mandela. For me, it's off the script, but it's just that thing of the spirit, of the enduring spirit, of the warrior spirit, of not forgetting. I mean, someone who can keep a narrative going whilst, when they put the lion to sleep, but keep the narrative going, you know, and even though you've been put down for it, keep it going, lest we forget. And that just seems to be a place that we live in as black actresses. That lest we forget, you know, sometimes you get a little up, you get a little good job and you might get carried away. Don't get carried away. Just remember what it was, what it is, what it ever will be. And, you know, just keep yourself armed and ready. So Miss Yvonne, because Miss Yvonne carry that spirit, you know, she go on like such a nice and quiet, but she is a warrior spirit. And so it's no surprise that Taloa is the name of her company, because, you know, there's she liquor, or she Taloa. Just like Winnie Mandela, Taloa. You know, war is war, and people are discredited. War is war. You know, and it's, I don't want to take it all political, but you know, that's how I felt that we have to be. We always have to be like this on our front foot in order not to get.
No, fair enough. And I don't see how you can not get political on a subject like this.
What's yours?
So I feel that it
answer the question.
I did answer the question. We're here today. Exactly. Oh. So Palimpsest. I feel like we're jumping straight in, but we kind of have to because time is short, because we're on the set of Barbershop Chronicles and they have an evening performance tonight, which is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you must come and see it. So I want to start off, I want to find themes for us to discuss as a collective. And obviously the first thing, because we're talking about black British actresses, I want to talk, can you tell us a little bit about images that you have seen, have had to play, or whatever, have had to represent of black women, or of women, if you're lucky for it not to be specified, or whatever. Can you trace for us, because we've got different generations here, can you trace how you see the images that black women portray in the business? How close is it? How accurate is it? Etc. You know what I'm talking about. Okay. Would anyone like to start?
Do you mean in terms of one's route, or just?
Yeah, in terms of that's why you're here,
yeah.
exactly, because of your experience.
For me, it was very loads of maids. Loads of maids. Loads of maids. Yeah, absolutely. And thank God for the maids. Seriously, because you don't go. I'm here, I'm working, and I'm talking about 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Always the friend, always the, but never the forefront. It's always the supporting actor thing. Never the forefront. TV's only just started for me recently as an experience, and that thing of watching. So when we go back to film and TV, you've got Hattie McDaniel. That's for me the biggest archetype I've made from Gone with the Wind, and the first black woman who won an Oscar. I was like, yeah, fuck it, all right. Then I'm going to be a great maid if I'm going to do it as well. So you get just so many different ways. But I always think it's always the maid, and it's interesting stepping out of that. Now the world, I so believe this is shifting so fast and so fundamentally, and all you young people especially have got to fucking ride it. Just write. I keep swearing, sorry, but write it.
You're intelligent.
Thanks, Thanks, Martina. I'll fucking carry on. But it's so exciting. It's so exciting, and it's about making the place now. So that's my archetype I have seen growing up. So when I saw other, oh my God, there's a businesswoman, there's a bank manager, there's brilliant. We were never the lover. We were never. It's only just slowly kicking in. Yeah. So that's why I write it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Guys.
That is the same. I remember at one time I was going up for something and a friend said, "Oh, what is it?" I said, "Oh, I think she's a cleaner." And she goes, "Oh, because you're always the hall cleaner, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And I thought that was because it was either I was going to be the prostitutes, because I have played
I've done
a few
that,
prostitutes,
Yeah.
or it was the cleaner, or you were the person. Then later on, that was like, I'm not going to. All right, that's gone. You were the person who was in the office outside, so you were the receptionist. You're not the woman, the business person. It's like you were that. So that was. But what I love now is I go up for things, and I do remember because I went to drama school in 1980 to 83, and the other girl in my year and I were the first two black people to have gone to LAMDA that time, and it was just they might not work. You know, there was that idea. That was 1980. You know, you might not. But I was the first person out of my year to get a job. I was cast as Viola to go up into a 12th night in Northumberland, and I was the first person to get a job in my year, and I got an agent as well, so that was kind of like, oh, what happened there? Yeah, it was a little bit like that. What happened there? What happened there? But I do remember that. It was that thing of that you weren't quite, you know, it was going to be difficult for you, and not that it wasn't, but what I love now is I go up for things, and I see lots of young black actors. I meet them constantly. I was saying I met a young black actor recently in the street who's also going to LAMDA. He just came up to me and spoke to me, and we were talking. He was going up for something, and I just come. And I thought, that's fantastic. Yeah. And now if you look at the books, I mean, it's just like having a black actor in that year is like any other stereotype. They've got the chippy northerner, they've got the blonde girl who's somebody famous's daughter, they've got the posh chap who's been kicked out of Eton, then they've also got the working class girl, and you've got your black actor. So it's just one of those stereotypes that now you have at drama schools.
I remember back in the day, because drama schools is the case because basically they're casting a company.
Yeah.
So if it tallies with what I'm saying. So I remember back in the day when you go up for an audition and you'd hear, oh well, so and so is in the part, which is one of your casting kind of equivalents, and you go, oh well, that's it. You got the black person. Yeah. But what's amazing now is that I actually get to work with other black women, and it's like, so things are changing.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
There's
more than one in the company. Yeah,
absolutely. But I remember because we'd go. I had the audition circle basically when I started off, and you know what I mean. It's you turn up and you see the same faces. So it's the people that you're kind of in competition with.
Yeah.
But what I found started to happen was I'd go, hey, Indra, so how did this thing go from last time I saw you?
Yeah.
Or Reiki, what's happening now?
Yeah.
The, the news from last time. And what we did was that we just kind of went, okay, this is our collective. This is our sisters, and we just use it as kind of a catch-up time.
Yeah.
That's the best way to look at it.
That is so true. So I
Yeah.
understand. That's a huge one for me starting out. The other one, the other black woman.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, it's Tanya Mood.
Yeah, that's
Can I just say, I was told by, is Tanya here? No.
She was okay, cool.
She'll, but she'll. I was told by, I didn't go to drama school, but I did my the CSE, whatever it was called then, O-levels, drama. My teacher said to me, you will only work when black people are in fashion.
Yeah.
And that was in 1985.
Yeah.
Yeah, 85, that'd be,
Yeah, that'd be about
that's
right.
still, that
Yeah,
would be
that'd
about right. Still,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's lovely to be here now.
Yvonne, can you tell us a little bit about exactly that, but what you've seen develop?
I'm shocked that things like that should still be happening. I came to England in 1956 to go to drama school, Rose Bruford, training college of speech and drama in sitcom. And I certainly was the only black person there. There was before there'd been one man who wasn't considered black, and it was Nazim Sahali. He has a very pretty daughter. He was there the year before me, but when I turned up, I was female, and I was called to Miss Bruford's office, and I was told, she mentioned to me that my fees had been paid for 3 years, and I thought my father doesn't want to see me again. And that they would take the money, but I should know I would never work. Right to my face, just like that. No, gathered company. This is a time in your career when you decide, you say, I want to go home, I kind of don't like me, and I can't stand it here and take me home. Or
Start a theatre company.
well, you say, watch this space.
I think that's very important because what I said to Yvonne earlier was, what does it take to have the audacity to be a young woman arriving from Jamaica in the 50s and end up basically changing the face of British theatre? I mean, that's audacity, and that's what I want to impart.
It's not audacity. I mean,
What
you
is
are
it?
my hostess, and
Oh,
Martina,
I'm
she's
not
lovely. But what it is that you don't have no sense.
Good. Annie.
Well, as I said before, I was full of audacity, and I knew what I wanted from a very early age. So I came to Rose Bruford, and I went to Rose Bruford too. And my year was the last year that she actually taught at Rose Bruford, and I was the black woman of my year, and I was not being given the parts. I did the maid and that, except I found out that you weren't going to work. That thing was there. So I went and got my own job. Every Saturday I came up and I worked for the BBC. I learned how to use the ewer, and I'd go out and I did the radio plays. I didn't tell them you weren't supposed to do that. So at the end, I said I was leaving. I'd finished. I wasn't waiting for no damn graduation. And they said, I said I had a job. And they said, you haven't got your equity. I said, yes, I have. And they said, how? I said, I got it through the BBC. And they said, because in these days you had provisional, and then you had to have
Yes,
full.
that's
And
right.
they said, well, you
Yes.
can't do no TV because you haven't got your full equity card. I said, I have. And I left because before that, I refused to be given the same parts over and over again. And then I found out that they had to do a film about Rose Bruford, and they wanted me to be in it because it was the Central Office of Information that went out to the empire to get more students. And I said, I'm not doing it. You haven't given me any decent parts, so why should I publicize your school? And they gave me the lead of the next play. Britannia.
There you go. That's the power of no.
Yes. I mean, earlier on, Yvonne was saying about the power of being heard and being seen. We all have to learn that we have to know who we are and what we want, and don't take no shit. And when I finished, and I was understudying Isabel Lucas in the Drury Lane Theatre doing playing Mammy in Gone with the Wind. When Isabel was ill because she suffered from asthma, and I was called to go on, when I got in, I saw that they had not put my name in the program as playing Mammy. And I said, why not? They said, well, you know, we didn't have time. I said, well, I don't have time to go on. And it was Harold Fielding, and they called Harold Fielding and everything. I said, no, I'm not doing it unless my name is in the program or the audience knows who's playing that part. And so they said, we'll put it outside. I said, where? They said, at the box office. I said, I'm not changing until I go round to the front and I see it. And it was pinned with one pin by the box office. I said, what about the people who've already bought their tickets and got to the box office? I'm not going on. I went upstairs, and when you can tell me that my name is known that I'm playing that part, I'll come down and change into Mammy. And they did.
Ladies and gentlemen, the inventor of the taped audition. Angela.
My take is I did not at all come up in the sort of industry side. It was all very organic. So especially in my earlier days and right into my later days, I mainly done black theatre, of which I am proud, because I went into acting because I wanted to express myself. I wanted to exude what was coming out of me. And when I'd go to auditions, you know, general auditions, I felt it quite staid, the energy was always very low. But when I'd go to an audition or for a black production, the energy was very high. It drew me. So therefore, I stayed in my lane, and I was very happy. And until those other people would recognize that, okay, you know, you can work with this piece of dough. When you're ready to work with this piece of dough, you can come and work with this piece of dough. But until such time, I will stay where I am loved, because I know what I'm dealing with, and they recognize me, and so I recognize them, and I'll just deal with that. And also, when I, a couple of times, one time I think I did feel myself though. Because one time, because you know, I was, you know, young and radical, and I was going for an audition where I was supposed to be like, you know, all sexy girl and all that, and it was winter, and I had my snowsuit was like my one suit of clothes when I was going out in the cold, and my audition said, or agent said, you should go as that thing, go, you know, go the part, and I was going, go the part, I'm an actor. You know, they can see what I've done, they're going to audition me, they must know what, so if she can do it or not. And I wore my snowsuit. And I think I made a mistake. We do make mistakes. I will own up to my mistake. I think I could have got that job if I'd done the thing, because I could sing and I had the young body and everything. Another thing that happened to me, and I'm not sorry for that, is that my first TV that I might have got would have been apparently being naked in front of a doctor, because I'm going to be examined by the doctor, and the doctor would be facing me and the camera would be there, and you know, whatever he's going to do. And then I wasn't told this before the audition, so I got there and then they told me this, and I was quite feisty when I was young. And as he started telling me that this is what was going to happen, all that was going in my brain was, well, the first time people are going to see me on the television. Because I was always very conscious of being a young black woman and how as soon as people see a black person on the television, it's come, someone's on the television. And the first time they're going to see this young black woman on the television, she's going to be naked. And it wasn't going to happen to me. So I just, as he was speaking, I just slumped down in the chair like this. Yes. And they very politely ejected me. I didn't mind. So it's like I've kind of stuck to certain principles of which I'm not ashamed, and it has limited me. But there's something else going on that I want to see going on. I want to see going on.
Please do. I think it's fascinating. And there's such an awareness, I think we all have it. Whoever you are, I don't care, about how you want to be represented in the world. And I think for black women, as what history has shown us, what images, you go, but I don't, that's not me. That's not, I can't do that. I can't be the one who's going to sell out my soul, my principles, to do that. So when I say playing the maid, I've got to love that fucking maid. Exactly. You go, why do I want to be seen naked? You don't have to do that. Yes, you don't earn any money, but that's fine. Just for this moment. Just for this moment.
But it's just like being asked to play the gun-toting young black man.
The archetypes.
A few times. And
so that's another. No, that's another role that we can all go. Yes. So we've got you. I like that you've taken us onto kind of the sexualization of the black woman, and we've talked about maids and things like that. We're talking about the mother of the gun-toting young black man, who often ends up dead.
But also talking about that thing of yourself and your own integrity, which is really, really important. I mean, I went to Lambda and it was very different from, and basically I had a very good English teacher who was very encouraging. She was part of the reason I got into the National Youth Theatre. She encouraged me, she told me, oh, there's something I think you ought to do. She was an old-fashioned teacher who saw something in a child and an interest and encouraged it. So I was very fortunate to have that. And then even when I auditioned, because my parents didn't know anything about these things or what it was, she went and asked somebody and said, well, she got into these different drama schools. I got into East 15 and Central and Lambda, and they said, which one should I go to? She asked somebody and they said, oh, go to Lambda. So that's what happened. But while I was there, my home life and my life at drama school was so different. It meant that, and I was young when I went, I was 17, it meant that I found that hard and I was immature to really make that work. I basically put on a mask when I left my home, and then I went into drama school, and then you can't act on top of a mask. So not being able to, and the reason why I was putting on that mask was because home was a fortress, because out there was them, and that was basically the big white world, and that was often against what we were at home. And so that's why I wasn't able to use that in that way, which I think is important now when people are feeling more, I see it in young people and my children, you know, people feel more confident and rooted in what they are and who they are, and I think it's really important that that core, that integrity, that you don't say, I'm gonna, all right, I've got to do this because, or they've asked me to, shut, and I don't feel comfortable, but I'm gonna do it because it's a job. No, you have to be good to yourself, and you're the most important. There's no job that's worth that, and in this industry it's difficult. That's a general thing. It's kind of thing like, it doesn't matter what it is as long as the job gets done. People will be humiliated.
The show will go on.
So, the show will go on, and that thing of the show will go on. You can say, oh, doctor, and that's great, but actually that often leads to people making damaging mistakes for themselves and their mental health, and that's something you've got to hold on to. It really is important. Really hold on to that. To what you are, and hold to yourself, because you sell that and slowly it chips away.
Can you expand a bit on the mental health thing? Because there's so much that we could talk about today. There is so much, and please, there are forms that you will be given, and I've asked them to include a space on the form for your opinions about what you would like to see explored next, or how you would like the conversation to continue. But I think we can't avoid the mental health issue. We were talking earlier with Angela and Yvonne, and and you're bringing this up now about what is the cost as a black woman in an industry where you are placed right at the back to have to function not only with a mask within the profession, but then to be so displaced in your cultural background as well. I just want any kind of commentary, and then I'm going to start opening it up to the audience. Does anybody want to reflect on that point? Noma?
Yeah. This generation, we all know this. I think that going back to we're always the one who goes in the room, you see the other one, we're fucked.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to start making friendships, but a lot of the time we were adversaries.
I think that's changed now.
It's so changed.
That's really changed.
So
That's really changed.
I would say for our generation, mental health for me was, I remember basically being in bed for a year and a half.
Yes.
I couldn't understand
Yes.
why, but there's no point going out there. But I also don't want to do anything else, but I'm not being seen in any way. And you start realizing all these little chats you have with people. You go, oh, you went through that. You went through. I know that Sherelle and Charlene, Blacktress. What I'm very proud of them. They've started this group for young black actresses, specifically coming out of drama school. Is the difference with all the little groups that we had is that they're focusing on mental health.
Correct.
And that is so important. Because our brokenness makes us brilliant. You know, the stronger the broken places. We hold on to that. But you've also now got each other. So the power of that is phenomenal. Yeah. We're amazing. I'm not taking that fucking away. We're amazing. But that's why we're here. Do you know what I mean? So that's why you young ones are here. You're going, yeah, we've done it. Yeah. But now you've got each other to look at. It's huge. The mental health thing is huge.
And I found also talking to people like the Blacktress Company and things like that, of whom there are a few people here, that the crisis, as much as the younger generation, we're telling them that they're stronger, but this crisis still happens within the drama school environment. I've heard, and you know, of leading drama school as well, where the young black women are still kind of having to check out. One person I knew had to have terms off to kind of try and figure out who she was and how she fitted into Chekhov and what was expected of her playing Nina and, you know, all these kind of things, which of course we want that in our training and our education, but I don't think that the special experience, the specific experience of being a black woman, young woman in these environments is quite being appreciated yet, and maybe it's something that we can talk about further in the future.
Yeah, I mean, when I started in the theatre in the mid-60s, and we had support. You had trying to get into whatever work you could, but we made our own work as well, and that's where we had support. We had lots of theatre companies that set up. We had no money. I mean, we were talking about archiving. Part of the fact that we don't know about some of these things is we had no money to archive it, to make programs, to keep them. But we were there, and so that gave you an opportunity. I would go off and I'd do a Wole Soyinka play and tour with that, and then come back and try and do my maid. But I'd be a damn good maid.
Yes.
Because you had to do some of those things. I remember when I started up, my parents came from every country you can possibly think of that's black, because you had to get a job. So they wanted somebody who was from Jamaica. Papa was from Barbados. Because there comes a time when you say, I am who I am, and this is what I have to offer you, and you've got to respect it, and you've got to accept it. But one of the things for me that helped my mental health was to say that this is not all that I am, that I have other things that are worth going out there and doing. And so we have to not just wait for them to give it to us, but for us to make it for ourselves. Because otherwise we are never going to show our full extent and depth of us. We will always be on the periphery with our hands out. Correct. No, come to us. We got things you want.
Come to us. Come to us. And Yvonne, that links to you quite perfectly.
Oops. No, I was thinking it's quite interesting listening to Annie saying that she had support and in those days. There's a subjective suggestion here that there's no, I like this, there's no support these days.
Oh, there is.
Now I have a long distance view on this because I've been around trying to do theatre in this country. As a black woman, I've never done anything else or been as anyone else. And I remember in the 50s, so what? Support. There wasn't anybody, they used to touch you on the tube to find out if your skin color came off, or pull your hair and stuff. So there was no support. You had to find that support within yourself and whatever your family, wherever they have to be. Now, I am not jealous because I don't have a green bone in my body. But nowadays, there's things like this. You know, I think that one should celebrate the possibility and the practicality and the actual fact that this is happening. In a place like this, which is what Martina said. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, it is up to each individual in this room to make sure that they don't go against what you yourself or the community as itself is trying to do. I have one short story here. When Talawa was trying to build a building, and we got, I think it was $9 million pledged. One of the reasons why that building did not come off was because of the letters that were written to the Arts Council and the Department of Education and Arts, or whatever they call themselves, to say, why should one company get all the money and the rest of us don't get any? Now, as a result of which, nobody don't have nothing.
There's still no building.
It's, you know, it's still, no, the building is now one for some very pretty white people. But there's no, and it wasn't going to be Talawa, it was going to be Black Theatre Building, and that's what it was about. Now, I'm not trying to bring a horrible thing in here, and we do support each other. I mean, when you see the tactile nature of black people who are trying to row a very hard hoe, or hoe a very hard row. It is amazing because there's such support, there's such understanding, but we mustn't think that we're where we were when we were, because we are way ahead. And in fact, when I turn on the telly, I live in Italy a lot, so all I can get is Channel 20. They were all done about 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But when I turn on that thing and I see the representation of my people, now I'm no longer Jamaican for a moment, you know, my black British people, honestly, I said, oh, weird. This is happening. It's not enough, but one's got to get the strength from understanding that there is a great thing forward that is happening to the work that we are doing, that we can afford to sit around like this and speak. So come out with head high, tails high, and go upwards and onwards, rather than downwards and spread out flat.
That's it. We've run over, I'm afraid. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to go to the bar.
The bar.
I'm going to my
We have a photographer here, Naomi Laird, but we also have Campbell X.